Hey guys, Vazzy back here, and in today's video we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Today's video is titled, Do You Remember EA NHL? So what do I mean by do you remember? This will be like small little facts or quirks about some of these older NHL games, where if you were there, if you were playing these games back in the day, you instantly know what I am talking about. So these games are going to be more or less in the range from NHL 14 to NHL 21. Didn't want to really add anything newer to this list, as, most people probably already will have known what I'm talking about. But if you are newer to the EA NHL series, you might not know some of this stuff existed in the franchise before. And really, you know how I like to do things here. I like to kind of have a lot of the retro games kind of feature as more of an archive on this channel of what has come before, and obviously some of these older games, NHL 16, 17, 18, 14, whatever it may be, wasn't around with the YouTube channel back then, so it's just kind of that way to document some of the stuff that happened and reminisce about some of these older games. So with that being said, let's jump into today's list. Starting out with, do you remember when any created player would become a UFA at the expiration of their contract? This was such a just stupid issue for so many years. This didn't get addressed for a very, very long time. So I made a Matvei Michkov here as an example. He has $650,000 contract, two-way, one-year deal with the Philadelphia Flyers. He is a young prospect. He should be a RFA at the expiration of his contract. But in these games, for whatever reason, that is not how that worked. So let's go jump into our franchise mode quick, and then I'll show you what this is all looking like once you get into the mode. So now that we are in franchise mode, let's go to manage contracts, and let's go check out the status of our Matvei Michkov. This is on NHL 17, just to be clear with you guys. I don't think it was patched until, I want to say NHL 20? I could be wrong on that, but that does sound right to me. And there you have it, Matvei Michkov. He is a young 21-year-old high elite player for the Flyers. One more year on that contract. And if the Flyers don't want to sign him, or he doesn't want to sign with the Flyers, he is instantly becoming an unrestricted free agent. So imagine trying to create a custom roster, trying to add in all these draft picks that are missing, just so that, 3 years in when that ELC expires, each and every one of them ends up hitting the free agent market. This was such a pain, and I remember just back in the day being so annoyed with this. And yeah, I don't know why it took so long to get this fixed. Moving on, our second created player issue, and it was how created players always used to take an insane amount of shots. So here on NHL 21, once again, I have created a Matvei Michkov. Again, the player doesn't matter whatsoever. This is just to show you guys an example. So this was obviously before we had the pass shot bias stat that could be adjusted. So before, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if this was confirmed, but every created player more or less had one for shooting. And this resulted in all those created players taking way too many shots. But let me go sim up a season with this Michkov, and I will show you guys what I am talking about. Okay, so we are at the end of our first season sim tier with the Philadelphia Flyers. So we had Michkov on the second line for the most of the year. Did get first unit power play time, but as a rookie, 83 overall, he had 37 goals, he played very, very well. But you'll see here, he took 333 shots. For Michkov, obviously being a sniper in real life, maybe I should have used someone who was more of a playmaker, but that's not how that should be happening. And Matvei Michkov overall in the league, he's third for shots in the entire league. So when they introduced the slider in NHL 22, this was one of the biggest changes to created players, as now at this point we could finally avoid this issue of all the created players being at the top of most shots taken in the league. But also it was an issue for real life guys as well. I think a lot of people remember the Jacob Forsbacka Karlsson. Every franchise mode had him because he was a crazy shooter. So adding in the pass shot bias was a huge win for the franchise. Moving on, do you remember the star potential system? So I want to say this was featured up until NHL 14 and the console generational swap. But before the current potential system that we had, it used to be 5 stars. And you could have 5 green, 5 red, or 5 yellow stars. And that was your low, medium, and high. So basically it is still the same potential system with a different UI. Obviously you don't get to see if a guy is medium bottom 6 potential, but there is a star rating that would be a similar equivalent to that. I currently like what we have quite a bit better. This just wasn't as friendly for the user in my opinion, but still I have so many memories of playing these older games and drafting guys with like just crazy 4.5, 5 green stars and them becoming monsters for my team. And I'm someone who's talked about it in the past. I still want to see a change from the current potential system just to have it being, a numerical value. But looking at what we have now compared to this, I think we're in a pretty good spot. And like I said, it just comes down to user accessibility and making things easy for new players to understand. Do you remember the old scouting and drafting system? This was something that I hated with a passion back in the day. So first of all, if you didn't set this, every single week you're going to be getting this pop-up asking your amateur scout where you want to send them. And when you're trying to sim a lot of stuff, when you're trying to do career simulations, make videos like myself, if this was still a thing nowadays, this would be such a pain. We want to get rid of these pop-ups, not add more. So that's how that was for scouting. You didn't have individual scouts, you just sent one to a region and they would scout that entire region. But then moving on to the draft itself. And I don't know, maybe I was the only one, but I was always so confused and I hated the old drafting system. So obviously on the right there you see top 5 projected pick, top 10 projected pick. That's great, that shows me that these players should be pretty good. But the potentials and everything were just so weird in what it showed. I know there were certain potentials that you could draft and they would be guaranteed to come out something better, and I don't remember what any of those were. I remember being a kid being so frustrated and I'm like, I have a first round pick, Samorukov here, supposed to be AHL top 2 defenseman. I know I haven't really scouted him at all there in that example, maybe not the best one to go for. But even, Velarde here, you had to go and uncover each and every stat, and I don't know, I just saw this as it looked quite a bit more messy. I know it is somewhat similar to what we currently have, but again, it just comes down to the user interface. It shows all the bars currently that you have a player scouted in current games. Like here, you don't really know that. It just wasn't very good in my opinion, and I'm so glad that they overhauled it in NHL 19, and I think it's in a much better place today. Moving on, who remembers the best original expansion pick? This is going to be a very quick list item, but who remembers when you were doing a franchise mode, who was that overpowered pick that you could get each and every single time? Everybody took them. It was the new feature. Having the expansion draft in, you could go in and get a medium elite goalie for free each and every single time, that being Yoenis Korpisalo. So it's kind of funny just to see where he is now and where his career is kind of played out. Obviously this was base default EA ratings, but I remember him winning like 4 or 5 Vezinas in like 6 years or something crazy. He always developed so well for me, always played insane. And he was a guy that you could get in the expansion draft every single time you ran it. And it's something I saw quite a bit online just through different series that people had run. Who remembers when NHL 15 launched without a NHL entry draft? So personally, this was something I actually don't remember, as I was still stuck on old gen, which it's kind of funny saying stuck on old gen, as that was the far superior version. We all know NHL 15 was a absolute tire fire. It was just a awful game that should not have been released. But how do you release a NHL hockey video game with a franchise mode and not have an entry draft? That's absurd to me. Like, that is one of the core things that you have to get in the game. I know sometimes Especially, I guess, when moving console generations, you can't have every little detail come over. Whatever, that's still annoying, but how do you have something as big as an entry draft not in? I know it was patched in at a later date, but not have that at launch? That is absolutely insane to me. Who remembers the old school NHL goalie trade values? So this was a big issue once again for quite a number of years. Really, really, really bad in NHL 19 specifically though, where you could go and get a medium elite, medium franchise goalie pretty late in the draft, and they would have just like more or less a full bar of trade value. So I think we all know that still in current NHL games, you can find medium elite goalies in the draft rather easily, but you can still flip them for, some value, but not nearly as much as what you used to be able to get. You used to be able to trade some of these goalies for some of the best players in the entire league, and it was absurd. Just look at the Florida Panthers here. They ended up drafting 3 of these guys. Think of what they could do for trades and who they could bring onto their team with all that value. Moving on, who remembers the broken editing suite in NHL 21? So this was a huge issue at launch. NHL 21 was in a rough state. But first of all, you could not even edit defensemen. If you went in and edited a defenseman and you got him to an 84 overall, and you saved and went to the main menu, does not mean that he was an 84 overall. This was such a weird bug that thankfully was patched, but here is a clip of Tugi talking about this. He made his reaction known when this game came out, so I will pass it over to him and he can kind of explain what was happening back then.
So what will happen is if you change the overall of a defenseman, case in point with Cale Makar, 86 in the creation suite, pretty sure I didn't see this incorrectly, but an 85 here. The overalls aren't matching up. And sometimes it's a 1 point difference for better or worse. Sometimes it's about a 5 point or 3 to 5 point difference. I dropped Michael Del Zotto down to a 78. He's showing up as a 75.
So as you can imagine, this made it impossible to roster edit. Thankfully, it was patched, but still, how this ever got into the game in the first place is beyond me. And last item for today's Do You Remember? Do you remember the disastrous trade value glitches in NHL 21? So a little bit of context is needed here, as in NHL 21, they tried to kind of revamp and improve the trade logic. For guys that were, let's just say, a pending UFA, they were on a reasonable contract, they were still producing reasonably well, would go up in value, which they should. They should be able to get a little bit more at the trade deadline, and that's totally fine. And, a lot of the times in these games, we see trades that aren't super realistic, but, it kind of is what it is. But in NHL 21, they took this to the extreme at launch. Shout out to Data, I'm getting a lot of the examples from his channel. He made a video back on this back in the day. But top pick, Alexis Lafreniere, traded straight up for Kevin Shattenkirk. Shattenkirk in a third for Cole Perfetti and Logan Stanley. Chris Russell in a fifth for a first, Barron, a second, and Devon Taves. Nick Ehlers for Derek Grant. And last one here coming from Tactics when he was running a franchise mode. Medium bottom six Sam Gagner, 81 overall, 33 years of age with a max trade value. He has more value there than Duchesne at 88, a medium elite prospect, Ryan Ellis, Dante Fabro. This was so stupid. And is something they at least did get a fix for, but I don't think it came till, I'm pretty sure it was December. So you had to wait a couple of months if you wanted to start up a realistic franchise mode without these issues. So that is going to do it for today's episode of Do You Remember NHL Edition. So many things that, I haven't thought about for so many years, but putting together this video, I wanted to kind of group all this stuff together and just discuss it and see how it's kind of evolved in current games. So I don't know if this is going to be something that I'll do as a series. I'm kind of curious, how many of these things did you guys actually know? Is this stuff new to you, or were you here for it all? And if you do want to see a part 2, I'm not promising anything here, but if you do, definitely leave some suggestions down in the comments, as I was around for a lot of these games and I do remember a lot of this stuff happening, but coming together with this list did take me quite a while, as you know, it's been a little while since I played these games and experienced all this stuff. But that will do it for today's video. I will see you all in the next one.